It's clearly a big moment. That it's the first sort of national address that Vladimir Putin's made. But how serious is this moment, do you think?
Hmm. It's serious for him. It's essentially an admission that the war is going disastrously wrong for him. You don't have to pour 300,000 more people into a war if it's all going swimmingly. It is a moment, I think, because we have to look at it in the context of the second point you made about these referenda that they're going to carry out in areas where they have, well, in fact, areas where they have a presence, but also the larger area, including bits that are still under Ukrainian control. As you say, I don't think it won't be any surprise which way those are likely to go. But what Vladimir Putin's said today essentially is we are going to declare these parts of Ukraine Russia, and if you try and take them back, then you're attacking the motherland. And so that's the motivation for, or that's his rallying call for getting these extra 300,000 troops into it, is that they are not invading Ukraine. They are defending Russia. And he also talked again about the idea that it was a war with the collective West along the front line in Ukraine. So effectively, he's behaving as if there were NATO troops in Ukraine fighting with Russia, and once he's annexed these areas, invading Russia back the other way.
And then that's clearly the sort of the trajectory he's on. How serious a threat is it then that he says that he might use? I've got great weapons. Some of them are better than everyone else's. Clearly hinting at the use of possibly strategic nuclear weapon. How serious a threat is that, do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting that you point that out, that he's threatening the use of a strategic nuclear weapon. Previously, there's been a lot of talk on whether he would deploy a tactical battlefield nuclear weapon within Ukraine. Now he's saying clearly that he could use it against the West, and he's painting the West as the enemy, not so much the neo-Nazis in Ukraine as he has done before. I think it's important to look at, even though it is, pretty terrifying stuff on the face of it, look at the context in which he said it. He said that the West was subjecting Russia to nuclear blackmail, and therefore he could play that game. So he's raising it as a specter, I think, rhetorically at this stage. I mean, let me win this war or I'll nuke you is not a position of strength. It's not a statement of strength to come from. So I think he's really just throwing everything into the bag right now.
And how do you think this will play out in Russia? Because clearly, if you thought the war was going brilliantly well and Russia was winning and Ukraine was crumbling, and then the president comes on the telly and says, I'm now mobilizing the reserve, there's no way round you thinking, well, maybe it's not going very well.
Mm. Well, I think, again, it's interesting. He said that the 300,000 were required, that the defense ministry said they were required to hold this front line, but also to administer the so-called liberated areas. Now, he can paint that front line as a front line with the West, which is slightly different to admitting that they're getting spanked by the Ukrainians, essentially. Quite how you justify the need for so many troops to administer areas where everyone's meant to be terribly grateful that you've come in and liberated them is a big ask. But one thing that's been going on in some of those areas as the Ukrainians have been moving forwards in this offensive is that local officials, the Ukrainians who did cooperate with the Russians who invaded, were told Russia is going nowhere, we're going to stay here forever. And so they are facing a slightly grim future in many cases when the Russians have run away and left them on their own to face prosecution as collaborators and traitors. So I think that some of those troops will be intended to give succor to those who have cooperated with the Russians and make them feel that they are going to stay, as will the referenda that are being carried out, which is intended to, as I say, sort of annex these territories and make them part of Russia.